Get your holidays started with the perfect tree in your perfect style from the Home Depot. Whether you want something that you can assemble in a few clicks, steal the show with over 2,000 color-changing bulbs, or a tree with lights that can be controlled by remote or foot pedal. The Home Depot has it all in our huge assortment of premium trees. Plus, get free delivery on over 2 million items this holiday from the Home Depot. Subject to availability. See homedepot.com/delivery for details.
Let me know if you can relate to this. You grow up looking at your family thinking, thank God I am not like them. But then, one day, it hits you like a ton of bricks. You catch yourself saying the exact same things your mom used to say, word for word. Or holding yourself like she holds herself. It's funny how much time we spend trying not to be like our parents, but somehow we end up falling into the same patterns without even realizing it. Now, it might not be a big deal when it's just a saying, or something we tell our kids, or with the way we carry ourselves. But what if it's something that really impacts our daily life? Like anxiety. It's hard enough having a front row seat to your parents' suffering, but when you start to notice those same patterns creeping into your life, it can feel like you're on a path you can't escape. I've watched my mom deal with what I'm pretty sure is OCD, and not the kind that stops her from living her life or anything, but just the kind that stops me from living mine when I'm around her. And I'm hopeful for myself on this one. I can be pretty cluttery. But then, out of nowhere, I'll get hit with a burst of energy and start cleaning like a madwoman, tunnel vision and all. It's like my mom's spirit has taken over my body, and I can't stop until everything is spotless. What I'm more clear is that I did inherit my dad's ADHD, so that's been an adventure. But here's the thing. Just because something runs in your family doesn't mean you're doomed to the same fate, even if it feels like all signs are pointing in that direction right now. But the truth is, you have the power to change course by reprogramming your patterns. And here's the really cool part. When you do that, you're not just changing your own life, you're also changing the course for your entire family line. By breaking the cycle of anxiety, OCD, ADHD, you're creating a new path for your kids, grandkids, and all of the generations to come. Today we're talking to Laura Rhodes-Levin. She's a licensed therapist who specializes in the treatment of anxiety, depression, and trauma. She holds a master's of science in counseling, and she's known for her unique approach in the understanding of anxiety and anxiety disorders. She's also the author of The Missing Piece: Rewire Your Brain, Reduce Anxiety, and Recreate Your Life. Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts: a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up, or text the word morning to 33777. 3 key things we will learn today are the hidden impact of historical trauma and how it's shaping your current behaviors and anxieties, how the scars of our past can be converted into unique gifts and strengths, and how love as an active process can change your mental health.
They go to the same store, they go to the same markets, they see the same movies, but each and every one of you is living in a different world. This world is all happening on this planet, but there are many different dimensions that we can exist on in this planet, many different frequencies, so that it's very difficult to realize and understand. And I don't know that I've explained this the way I want to, but we're all living on the same planet, but we're living in completely different worlds. Our experience of the world around us is unique to us. And you are ultimately the creator of that experience.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa
So, what inspired your deep dive into your expertise in anxiety?
I would say anxiety for 10, Alec. um, Anxiety has been a lot of my life story, and I finally found a way out, and I felt I should share it.
So, can you explain a little bit about how some of our anxieties are inherited and how we should change this approach to mental health?
Absolutely. We have figured it out in physical health. When you go into a medical office, they want to know your family history because it's very relevant to your medical history and profile today. Well, through experiment and studies, we found that we also inherit trauma and emotional states. The study that was the most relevant was following generations of Holocaust survivors and their families, and being able to note that that instinct to run was inside their bodies. It was inside their DNA, and it's fascinating for me because I don't think that's where the buck stops. I think you can change your behavioral and mental system, whereas blue eyes, unless you get blue contacts or something, you can't really do anything with that. But I really feel and have experience in watching people change that aspect of themselves, and it brings me so much joy, really.
And so I am actually considering what comes to mind for this is my husband's dad was in the Vietnam War and he experienced a lot of trauma, obviously. My mother-in-law shares how there's just certain times where he'll pop out of bed like he's being attacked, like he hears a bomb. And it's so interesting because my husband does that when the alarm goes off. He's not allowed to set the alarm in our bedroom anymore
Wow.
because I'd be like, "Oh my gosh, what? Nobody's attacking us. What is happening?" It's just
Yeah.
an alarm. Go sleep on the couch. So I can totally see how I hate to be laughing right now because it's kind of a dark subject, but
Well, that's where the best humor comes from.
it really does. It does. And so a lot of us think, though, that, well, what's the balance of like how much do we know is inherited versus environmental or what we've experienced? How do those play together, or what's the difference?
I don't know that I have a scientific answer for that. I just know that the knowledge is helpful. For instance, this example that you give with your husband is so perfect. The Vietnam War, they called it shell shocked. I have no idea what that was. Did you hear that too? Okay. Well, um, they call it shell shocked, and that's been retermed PTSD. So that is the trauma I'm talking about. And so your husband could spend years in therapy going, I don't know why. Every time the alarm goes off, I just freak out. Well, when we know that, you don't have to spend years in therapy trying to figure out what's wrong with you. You are able to label it, figure it out, and then work on systems and processes to help you alter the behavior.
What would be a good first step in figuring out which of these behaviors or our tendencies are inherited or I feel like it's difficult for some people, and the reason I'm asking this question is a lot of us get stuck in this idea of like constant digging, trying to figure out where everything came from. I have certain behaviors where I just thought something happened to me as a child, and I spent a lot of time just like trying to figure it out, trying to find some repressed memory. And then I realized I don't know if I'm doing myself a service. I don't know if I did uncover the thing, a thing in general. Is this actually going to help me, or should I focus more so on that rewiring? Like, do we need to know where it came from to begin to fix the problem, I guess, is the question I'm getting at.
So there's actually two parts to the question. And the first question you asked is actually how my book opens. So in my book, I give a personal story and then a tool to reframe that story with, and then actual exercises that the reader can use. And my first chapter is about genetic trauma. And so, what I have people do in those exercises is to sit down and think about your parents and grandparents and what kind of trauma they had and where it might show up in you so that you can start to separate out your own fears, and because they do morph. So my grandmother ran from Cossacks, and her mother was shot and her brother was killed, and then she was very overprotective over my mother. So my mother somehow morphed that into kidnapping, and she wouldn't let us open a window in our house. And I was so terrified of having someone break into my house from a very young age. And at 24, I went, you know, that's not my stuff. That this is not a fear that I need to embody on a day-to-day basis. So the part about understanding it, and I hope this analogy isn't too graphic, but if you didn't know what your menstrual cycle was and you just bled profusely every month and wanted to cry and everything seemed wrong, you would think you were dying. Every single month, you would think, oh my God, I'm dying. But since we know it's the quote, gift of life, now we can deal with, all right, we're not dying. We know where it's coming from. What can we do to mitigate the symptoms? So everybody takes, some Midol or whatever and smiles and grins and bears it. That's even grown. PMS was not something that was acknowledged for a long time. And men were like, you really do change. And women found that to be offensive and hurtful. And now that we can say, yeah, those hormones have a strong impact on us. So we start to work tools around how we deal with that physically, mentally. And so the knowledge of where it comes from is very relevant, but it's not the be all end all. To me, your story touches me personally because if you have a sense that something went on in childhood, as a therapist, what I found is that sometimes we get to the original source and sometimes we don't, but your body's telling you something. And just by sitting down and trying to listen to it, you start to uncover what's happening in the past sometimes, but you definitely uncover whatever these feelings are, how they're impacting your relationships today. And that you can always work on. So it sounds like your body had some sort of alert system, some sort of like a fever to a cold. Something's wrong. Let's fix it. So sometimes having that information can be very helpful, but it's not entirely necessary for the healing, but it's helpful.
I think the menstrual example is actually really good because you're right. It would be like, what is happening to me? That makes me think, I don't know, maybe I'll just make up that something did. Like if I can't get to it, just be like, no, something happened. That's why I'm a weirdo over here. Or if you're adopted and you don't have your family history or something like that, just make it up. Normalize it for yourself.
Well, and maybe you're not ready for the information yet. Maybe your subconscious needed to alert you to get going. And when I feel so drawn to just jump into a therapy session with you, which we won't do,
Go
but
for it.
when the time is right, if you're supposed to have that information, it absolutely will come. And I'm going to, assuming you have a good therapist, you've discovered some things just trying to uncover, like an archaeological dig. Maybe you don't find the mastodon, but you find a Mesozoic society that you didn't know existed.
And then there's two parts to the family history in the idea that these things are actually passed through our bodies, like the response with my husband. But then also, based on what my mom experienced in childhood, that's going to affect how she raises me, the things that she's afraid of, those fears that I witness. So then it kind of brings in the inherited, but also the environmental.
Yeah, trauma morphs. Trauma definitely morphs. It finds its life in a different form.
What are some of the ways that you've found that traumatic experiences of parents shape the way that they raise their children?
Oh my God, like almost every way. Um, you have someone who was, say, completely abandoned as a child, and I've seen this many times. And then they have children, and they're practically, strapping harnesses above the crib, watching their every movement. And um, that child, rather than feeling abandoned, is feeling so smothered and has zero stress tolerance. And the parent doesn't get it. They're like, "You don't understand. I didn't have love like this. You're so lucky to have me as a parent, as someone who cares and who is just interested in your every move." Well, that kid has no abandonment issues. I mean, if we harp on the genetic, okay, but in the present life experience that they're having, they're just like, "Oh my God, can you please leave me alone?" And it can also create, it's a very interesting thing. A lot of kids who experience a trauma at a young age, yeah, even overly, they adapt some amazing skills because they have to take care of themselves in as children. They learn very young. I got to look out for me. And then they're so dedicated to taking care of their child that that child has very little stress tolerance. There's not a lot they haven't been sheltered from. And so now I've got a clinic full of teens that, are suicidal over a test because they just don't, and parents are going to call the school and they're going to fix it and they're going to get special education plans. And I'm not talking about someone with special needs. I'm talking about, just freaking out over the smallest thing. So that's what I mean by the morph. It can turn into something else. When does the pendulum stop in the middle? And that's where I hope therapy comes in, because um, I love seeing families. You can watch the generational trauma and then fix the system, and then try and do your best to balance it with the younger generation of the family.
You know what's funny? We spend so much time feeding our minds, reading books, listening to podcasts, learning new things, but then we grab whatever's convenient to feed our bodies. And I get it. Life is busy, and sometimes a drive-through feels like the only option. But that's why I take Field of Greens. It's a greens powder made with whole organic fruits and vegetables. No extracts, no lab-made stuff, and just 1 scoop a day gives you simple, real nutrition. Field of Greens feeds your body with fruits and vegetables medically chosen to support your heart, vital organs, and immune system. And let me tell you something. Since I started taking it, I've noticed these little changes that show me how nutrient depleted I must have been before. Like the ridges in my nails, gone. My sleep, so much better. And my stomach just feels happy. You know that dreaded afternoon crash that has you reaching for more coffee or sugary snacks? Well, that's not happening for me anymore. When your body is actually nourished, it runs so much better. I've tried other greens powders before, but Field of Greens is genuinely different. The quality is next level, and you can taste it. It's become my go-to, especially on those days when my eating isn't exactly Instagram worthy, because we all have those days, right? And here's the thing. They are so confident that you'll love it too, that they offer a 100% money-back guarantee. That's how much they believe in their product. So I got you 15% off your first order and free rush shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code MINDLOVE. That's promo code MINDLOVE at fieldofgreens.com. Fieldofgreens.com. I don't know why it took me so long to invest in good bedding. I resisted it for years, but something flipped in me about 3 years ago. And now I'm basically a pillow connoisseur. I've tried them all, and I get weirdly excited about good bedding. Because here's the thing, we spend a third of our lives in bed, and the quality of that time affects literally everything else, which is why I'm so excited to tell you about my latest obsession, Lagoon Sleep Pillows. What sets them apart is their matching system. You take a quick 2-minute quiz about your sleep style and your preferences, and then they match you with your perfect pillow. I was matched with their Otter pillow, and I am so impressed. Lately, I've just needed more support, and this seems to cradle me in all the right places. I'm also low-key obsessed with their travel pillow, which I use for way more than just travel. I actually hug it, use it as leg support, and of course, take it on trips with me. Well, the secret is in their adjustable fill. You can add or remove it to get that perfect alignment for your spine. A study even found that the right supportive pillow can improve sleep quality by 63%. And Lagoon lets you try their matched pillow for 100 nights risk-free. Free returns, no questions asked. Falling asleep has never been easier. I toss and turn less and just wake up feeling refreshed every morning. Go to lagoonsleep.com and take their awesome 2-minute sleep quiz to find your match. Use the code MIND for 15% off your first purchase. I can see that even in my own lineage where my grandma had 5 kids. On my dad's side was a whole other traumatic experience, but those kids weren't given the love that I was. So my mom did it differently. But then now I'm looking at all these things. I knew what problems I had as a 20-year-old. The whole reason that started this growth process that led to what I do now. And so then I'm like, well, I got to do a bunch of stuff differently so that my kid doesn't end up like me. So I'm swinging it the other way, really trying to find that sweet spot balance. But sometimes I do have to step back and I'm like, okay, my body is reacting as though the choice of peanut butter that my child is going to get when he stays with his grandmother is going to kill him. Dial it back. It's okay. It's not organic.
Right. Well, and you said something so profound, which is what I think the bigger purpose, if you look at it from a meta soul projection, is that we learn how to take these traumas, whatever darkness you've had, and it seasons you as a soul. And it ultimately creates your beautiful flavor that you were meant to be. I mean, here you are reaching out to people with mind and love and just healing. And would you even have done that if you hadn't been through what you've been through? So it's taking these traumas and turning them into gifts. That's the goal for me as a therapist and as as a human.
Another topic that you mention in your book is around how a child's feeling of being invisible affects their adult relationships. And we live in this time where it's such a beautiful thing how we're bringing more language to emotional states, to feelings, gentle parenting, things like that. And at the same time, we're all very aware of this while a huge population has a phone addiction. And there's sometimes where all of a sudden I'll realize, like, oh my God, how often, because I also am running my business while watching kids, how often are they seeing me just in my phone? And as much as I try to be mindful, then I end up making an excuse because I'm like, well, I'm also breastfeeding. And then my toddler comes up, and there was a period of time where he would go, "Wake up, mama," whenever I was on my phone. And I was like, oh, that was like a knife to the heart. Like, I'm asleep. I'm sleepwalking through life in this very moment. And so I'm curious about how those feelings of being invisible affects their adult relationships and their self-esteem, because I think we need to understand the consequences fully to really show us how critical it is to change that type of behavior. And I think that's one of the things that's going to lead to it is all of our phone addictions.
Well, I can so hear the knife in the heart of wake up, mama. And there's so much to unpack in that just little story you told. But what I want to do is, first of all, give you some grace in the life you're creating. And we are multitasking. You are trying to raise 2 children and work and do all these things. So cut yourself some slack. And it goes to what I was speaking to earlier. Kids are so used to, in this day and age, having their parents' constant attention. And I don't think that's good for them. They need to learn how to self soothe, they need to learn how to entertain themselves. So the fact that you're not completely doting on him 100% of the time is healthy. It's good for him. Now, from his perspective, he may be like, "Hey, I want your attention." But I promise you, his future wife or partner or whatever it is will thank you for not doting on his every eyebrow lift, because it can go the other way. I mean, here you are, you're feeding one child, you're trying to work, and you've got another one running around. I'm thinking of your inner child, your little girl inside who had all of her stuff as a kid. And what you're telling her is, you're not good enough. You're not a good mommy. You're bad. You're going to ruin your child. And it's very different to have. I don't think there's any failures. I mean, we have blueprints from life. We learn from what we do, but give yourself a break here and have some heart and soul for your personal inner self who's trying so hard to manage everything. And we're all going to make mistakes, but that's what's going to season their lives. It doesn't sound like you're a neglectful mother.
Honestly, that was some grace I needed to hear, Laura. There is a shadow side to self-awareness. Sometimes I'm too aware and I need to, like I said, dial it back, really put into perspective what I am doing and what I'm not. But I think that's so common for mothers nowadays. And it's because we're getting a lot of information online and we are scrolling through things and we are seeing people's highlight reels. And it is so impossible not to compare ourselves, even when we know comparison is a trap and that it's not healthy to do. It's like it seeps into our subconscious and all we can see are our flaws. And that's been happening since the beginning of time, but it's happening on such a deeper level because you're not just comparing yourself to Sally next door. You're comparing yourself to the literal billionaire that's making her bread from scratch in her kitchen, acting like she has no help. And some of you know who I'm talking about out there.
And some of those people do time. You just never know what's going on. But again, I think this all comes down to self-love. I mean, what you're talking about is, again, this goes back far beyond our personal genes from our family. If you think about the word, and this is another chapter in my book, but if you think about the word outcast and you look at what that meant literally, when we were in caves, when we were in clans, if we were cast out, that meant death. You weren't going to survive on your own in the wilderness. You needed your clan. So the need to be accepted and wanted is primal. At the same time, if everyone in the clan hunted mammoth, they'd have nothing to sleep on. If everyone in the clan wove mattresses, they'd have nothing to eat. In a clan, there was something for someone for everything. There was the medicine man. There were the breastfeeding mothers. There were the herb gatherers. I could go on and on, but it's so important to nurture that very special thing that is just you. And that's what the world around you needs. You were created for a reason, and our desire to fit in and achieve what everyone else is achieving, while it's meant to be a motivator, ultimately dilutes our own natural sense of self, our own special soul that your family needs. Your family needs you to be you, not that woman or Sally next door or anyone. And that's why at the crust of all the work, as corny as it sounds, and I wish it wasn't even thought of as corny, is love yourself. Love yourself. Always be open to growing and changing what you find, ruins your own inner peace and makes your life unharmonious. But fine tune you as your own special instrument, and you'll be a beautiful part of this orchestra of life. You can't be a piano trying to sound like a cello. And so I love that you're exploring you, even if you don't know exactly where it came from. There was pain. And so loving yourself through that pain, that little wounded child inside of you, just holding her and taking care of her and encouraging her and helping her grow, then makes you the person who does this podcast that, guess what? No one else is doing. And there could be a billion podcasts, but none of them are like your podcast. You are Melissa. You bring something very special that no one else can bring. And so it's so important to remember that, I think.
I totally agree. That's actually what I help people through, is figuring out what that unique thing is, because we're trying to fit into these roles. So many people reach middle age, midlife, or before or later, and they have checked all those boxes of success, and they're wondering why it doesn't feel good, why
Yes.
they feel like something's missing, wondering, is this really all there is? Like, I've done all the things right. And it's like, well, yeah, you're trying to be somebody else. That's not going to fulfill you. That's going to fulfill society in general. There's so much money that goes into conditioning us all to be consumers. And so we think we want all these things, and these are the things that are going to make us happy. This supplement, this car, this type of house. And then it's like, that's not fulfilling me, because we haven't been spending that time to figure out what it is that we uniquely feel fulfilled by. And one thing you said about the love aspect is, I think the reason it was so difficult for me to grasp this sense of self-love when I was younger is because I was looking at love as this more passive state. Like, oh, I just need to really enjoy all of my features and all of my skills or whatever it is. And the brain has this negativity bias. And so it's our nature to kind of look for the flaws and look for what's wrong for our own survival. When I turned that around and made love an active process, and that's kind of the theme behind Mind Love, is we have to go out there and give our minds that love, like look for the good, just like a gratitude practice would mean consciously looking for what you're grateful for to start to rewire that brain, the way that your habits of thought. And if we start looking at that self-love process as like, what can I do for myself today? What can I look for in myself? How can I consciously create this day, which then leads to consciously creating your whole life? That's when it starts to shift, because you're not leaving as much room. It's not just like this love is supposed to blossom up into your life and you're supposed to love everything about yourself. No, but with those active steps and figuring out what you can do, just a little thing each day, that builds up.
So beautifully said. So beautifully said. And you said, is that all there is? Which I talk about in therapy quite a bit. And it's really, I'm not even dating myself, because this goes back to before my time, but there used to be a Peggy Lee song called Is That All There Is? And it's such a depressing song. But I get so excited for women who come in their, because it was my experience too, in their 40s and 50s and 60s, with that, is that all there is? And going, hey, you've been doing what you've been told to do this whole time. You haven't even had a chance to discover who you are. You got out of school and you got married and where was the time for you to figure out what environment you were going to grow best in? And like you say, you don't have to get into the golden years of your life to have that awakening. And I love this concept of love in action. What a beautiful way to put it, and what a great visual to create around the idea, because happiness takes work. happiness takes work. And so many people don't even have the consciousness of deserving, that they feel that they even deserve happiness. I mean, you can ask anyone and they'll say, yeah, of course I deserve to be happy. But their subconscious has informed them otherwise. And reprogramming all that negative bias that comes both naturally and through what we've inferred through our childhood. Because whether you neglect a child or whether you dote on them, they each get the feeling that somehow they're not good enough. Either they're unlovable or they're incapable.
Blinds.com is kicking off the savings early with Black Friday mega deals all month long. A Blinds.com design expert can help you make the perfect selection on your schedule. We can even handle everything from measure to your whole home installed for just one low cost. With over 25 million windows covered, Blinds.com is the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings. Save up to 45% on select styles, plus a free professional measure right now at Blinds.com. Rules and restrictions may apply.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
That brings up a fear for some people, I would assume, though, because it's like, okay, my natural wiring is telling me to fit in and to do all these things to belong. And as you mentioned in your book, our brains react to social exclusion with the same intensity as physical pain. And so stepping out to really nurture our uniqueness can feel scary or threatening to that belonging. So how do you suggest that people start to appreciate that unique value and contribution and nurture that and really choose to stand out instead of just fitting in without succumbing to those feelings of being an outcast?
That's a good question. I feel like each of us have a little voice inside that knows all of this. And it's our soul voice. And then there's the neurosis, the neurotic voice in our head that immediately flushes that away like, no, 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 no. And it's about getting more and more in touch with that little voice that's like, this would feel really good. And giving yourself permission to step outside that comfort zone. There's a sign that's painted above my office door that says, "Welcome to the unknown. You're going to love it here." Because what you're talking about, I feel, really is giving yourself permission to step out of the mold and find what you really enjoy. And when it comes to the unknown, we tend to think bad. When people think of the unknown, change, people always say, "I hate change." Why? Because it's unknown. You wouldn't be making the change if it wasn't something that was supposed to be good, but we go to that worst case scenario thinking, what if we went to the other side of that scale of what could be great if I did this? What would if I did my hair pink? What good could come out of it? Yeah, there might be some people who looked at you at the office like, "Oh my God," whatever. But if you woke up in the morning and you love looking at your pink hair every day, you're going to walk into a store or a place somewhere and someone's going to say, "Oh my God, I love your hair." And then they're going to do their hair pink. And I'm talking about a minor trait, but you have a certain frequency. And if your frequency isn't helping you feel good, change your station. Find the state. Not everybody likes country. Not everybody likes rap. Not everybody likes jazz. But what do you like? Find what you like. Find what raises your vibration, what makes you feel good. Who cares what anyone else thinks? Because if you're feeling good, your people will find you, and you will find your people because you're putting out the right frequency. And so that's what it is for me, is tuning into your own personal frequency and letting that freak flag fly, because it's not a freak flag. It's you. It's your flag. And even the most conservative of people, they feel like freaks because, oh, everyone else does this. So it's it's not a tangible concept, but that feeling inside of you, you know it. You've had it. Go with that no matter what.
I think that's where uh, this the fear that I mentioned of being an outcast when we go our own way, when we bring out some of our gifts, that's where the action starts to counteract that. When we're sitting in indecision, when we're trying to decide if we're going to do something, the fears are the greatest because we haven't proven it one way or the other. But what I'm constantly telling people is that both fear and faith require faith in the unknown. Like
Mhm.
both of them are us thinking about something in a certain way and basically creating whether our willingness to step into something or to stay where we are. And so if we're thinking about all of the bad things that can happen, it's going to be really hard to move forward. But we can only be thinking of one thing at a time. So when you notice that and you just decide, you know what? Let me just play with all the good things that could happen from this and step into that.
Exactly.
Then once you start taking the action and you actually feel differently, you'll realize there was no other way. This is way better than staying where you are. And there's always that shedding process. When I first started working on myself and I stopped, doing like going partying every single night, those friends that I was hanging out with weren't going to come with me on this other journey.
Exactly.
The unfortunate part is there's this period of shedding where you feel like you have no friends. You wonder if you made the right decision because you don't fit where you were and you haven't yet met the people that you're meant to be with. It reminds me of marketing. This happens in marketing a lot where people are like, well, I've been talking about emotional eating for 6 years and I don't want to talk about that anymore. I want to move into this. And so there's going to be all these unsubscribers.
Right?
My business owners will know what I'm talking about. All these unsubscribers, and you start freaking out like, oh my God, I'm losing everyone. But then you start to build your list of the right people. You start to attract the people that want your message, that are on that journey with you. And once you do that, though, you're so glad you had that period, because now you actually feel like you belong instead of
Mm.
fitting in on the outside, but feeling like something's off because they're not the conversations you want to be in. They're not doing the activities that you want to be in. And so I think there's that important like expectation of like, yeah, there might be an uncomfortable period, but it will all be worth it.
Well, and a lot of people think of this as like woo woo and manifesting. And I love studying quantum physics because this is pure science. Quantum physics says that if you have a vibration and an intention, there is a, a frequency out there that is ready to connect with you. And all of our frequencies become a self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, you see it in therapy all the time. The person who comes in who's the perpetual victim, and you separate them from that story. And guess what? They're not victims. They start experiencing completely different relationships. But if you're on a quantum physics frequency where everybody shits on you, guess what? People are going to keep shitting on you. And it's that fear of, can I trust that moving out of this, that there is another life out there for me? There's a life out there for me where I'm loved and where I have fun and healthy relationships. And what that in between part is, that's the relationship you're developing with yourself. That's when you are learning to go, you know what? I'm not someone who needs to be dumped on. I can set boundaries around this stuff. I don't have to do things that I don't want to do. I'm not a bad person. A lot of people think that setting boundaries makes you a bad guy. It makes you a healthy guy. And so that in between part is the whole recreation of your own frequency. And of course, like you said, here they come. All those people on the frequency who've been waiting for you. They've been waiting for you. And your old audience, they'll find someone else because there's a frequency for that out there too. But the important thing is what you're feeling inside, and you're having the conversations you want, just as you said. And oh my God, it's so fantastic. And I say this, and I hope people get what I'm trying to say when I say this. There's so many people living in Big Bear right now. And you think they go to the same store, they go to the same markets, they see the same movies, but each and every one of you is living in a different world. The way you experience Big Bear is not the way anyone else experiences Big Bear. There are people who have social anxiety in Big Bear, and they don't. Big Bear is a scary place. The people there are this and that, and the market is this and that, and this world is all happening on this planet. But there are many different dimensions that we can exist on in this planet, many different frequencies, so that it's very difficult to realize and understand. And I don't know that I've explained this the way I want to, but we're all living on the same planet, but we're living in completely different worlds. Our experience of the world around us is unique to us. And you are ultimately the creator of that experience.
I love the visual of the tuning forks. I feel like it just shows you exactly how this attractive vibration works, because it's fascinating where you can have a bunch of different tuning forks and they're all like a different
I
note, a
love that
different
you bring
vibration.
them up. That's just so cool.
And then when you ring one of them, all the other ones will be silent if they don't match that vibration. But if it does match the vibration, it'll just start vibrating and making its own sound. And it's the same way where it's like we activate the potential in other people based on the frequency that we're carrying. And so I've experienced, even through my own life, my own lens of being in a place where I'm so lost, just wishing I could change everything and maybe even working towards something. And all I can think of is how far I have to go or how much work until I get there, if I'm ever going to get there. And then something shifted me. A lot of times it was like working with somebody, whether it's a therapist or a coach or a conversation with a friend or a book that I read. And then it just reminded me of my power. And I'm like, okay, well, what happens if I consciously give this love, and instead of allowing my mind, being lenient with my thoughts, allowing it to go down all of this I wish, and start looking at what I already have, or start changing my perspective about something, and then nothing changes but the way I'm looking at my life, and I experience it in a completely different way. And we all have that power, but the hard part for so many people is that some of our nervous systems are so deeply wired towards this anxiety, the social anxiety, that we're like, okay, well, I'm trying to look at it differently, but it all feels fake because my body's reacting in a specific way towards this social environment, or going to meet new people, or whatever it is, our current relationships that we're in. How do you recommend that people begin to shift some of those things so that their nervous systems and their automatic responses aren't overpowering the work that they're trying to do?
Well, that's again a good question. There's a couple of visuals that come to mind. If I go back to the radio station idea, if you don't like the station you're on and you want to go to another station, you're gonna hear that noise. I mean, I don't know if people have radios anymore, that they understand what I'm talking
Look it
about.
up on YouTube. See what we dealt with back in the day.
But even if we take today's modern technology, you may have to keep going through stations until you find the one you really like. But you don't just give up and go back to the station you hate. The other thing is, so many people, when they come to therapy, they want to be better. Like, how long is this going to take? I want it to happen now. And they're depriving themselves of, first of all, reality, but second of all, an amazing journey. So what I tell my clients is, let's say you're in California and your goal is to get to New York. What we tend to do, as you said earlier, is I'm still not in New York. I'm still not in New York. I'm still not in New York. I'm not in New York yet. I've been doing all this work. Okay, stop. Look back. You're not in California anymore. You're somewhere in the middle there. And you have had so many neat encounters. Like, I love it when a client comes in and says, I slept through the night. I set a boundary with my mom. Whatever it is, it's such a fabulous feeling that I wouldn't deprive anyone of, because it's all those little pieces of the journey that create the whole. And then guess what? You may end up in Iceland and go, the part of me that was in California that wanted to be in New York has grown so much in this journey that I don't even have an interest in being in New York anymore. I'm in Iceland and the Aurora Borealis is amazing. So it's important to have a place, an idea of where you want to go, but then just go and endure that unknown, the uncomfortable. But there is an intuition somehow that you're on the right path, and just keep following that. And it just blossoms. Everything just seems to get a little bit easier, a little bit easier, a little bit easier. And then, wow, you're a new alive person with new friends and a new environment. And like you said, you may not even have left the house you were in to begin with, or you may actually make a physical move. It's that internal process of just trusting it. And also surround yourself with people who believe in you and who trust your instincts. Stay away from the dream crushers and the naysayers. Look at their lives. Whose advice are you taking? Are you taking someone's advice that you like, yeah, I would totally live their life? Or are you just used to living your life through their lenses that you wouldn't want their life anyway?
I used to get offended when people wouldn't believe in my dreams. And then I realized that commentary is just an insight into the walls within the cage that they've formed around themselves, the limiting beliefs that they have. It's not personal to me. I've spent a lot of time learning to expand my mind and expand my lens of possibility. Why am I expecting this person over here who has not taken any sort of leap to understand that dream? And it's not that they're trying to knock me down. They're trying to keep me safe, because that's how they think that they're keeping themselves safe. And that has helped me to drop expectations of reactions of other people, and also to just have more compassion for it. Instead of getting upset, getting triggered, getting angry, it's just like, I'm sorry, I remember what it was like to live there. You know?
Well, I love that you say protected, because we have a lot of, it's not as rare to come out anymore, but you see with clients who are trying to come out and their parents are wanting so badly to protect them because they're fearing for them that they'll get, beat up or they'll get judged. And any one of us could get beat up or judged. I mean, we're constantly experiencing judgment, no matter what we do, whether you're an actor or whether there's judgment. That's life going out there. And the need to protect this child is so important to them. And yet what the child hears is, I don't love you for who you are. I don't want you to be who you are. And yet the joy that they have in becoming who they are, that's their right. That they can go and they can experience that, and they should. But understanding that their parents don't mean them harm is so important. It's just fearful love. And you still got to follow that feeling, that bliss.
You mentioned that intuitive wisdom that you're on the right track. And I was just having a conversation with a friend the other day, because I post a lot of spiritual things online, and she responded back like, I just I tried religion, it didn't work for me. I tried this, and I was telling her why a broader spirituality, why it resonated more with me, and was talking about that constant guidance. And she's like, I've just never felt that guidance. And I was like, I bet you have. You're just
Yes.
expecting something different, and your expectations are getting in the way, because I spent a lot of time in that place too, where I'm expecting this booming voice of God to where
Right.
it like ends up in my living room. He takes my hand, you know.
There's a burning bush. You know?
Yeah, and the other day I ended up texting her a screenshot, and I was like, this is what guidance looks like to me. And when you open yourself up to it and acknowledge it, you start receiving it over and over again. And I had randomly, out of the blue, just decided to text one of my best friends about the Big Bear Eagles. The Big Bear Eagles are very famous. People watch them on live stream all around the world because there's a little cam up by their nest, Jackie and Shadow. It's this whole movement. And I was like, it's really cool. Big Bear has these eagles, blah, blah, blah. Well, a week before, she had been having a lot of difficulties with her dad, and she just feels like her dad's kind of emotionally stunted. It causes a lot of issues, and we vent a lot about things like that. And she was all frustrated with him, and then went online and happened to see this video that she showed me about how the eagle is not affected by the crow. The crow apparently is the only bird that will attack the eagle, and it'll be nipping at him, and the eagle will just keep flying higher and higher and higher. Instead of attacking the crow back, just keeps flying higher, because at a certain elevation, the crow can't handle it anymore and will naturally fall off. And so it's just this symbolic story to stop worrying about the people that are getting down on you, that are trying to knock you down. Just keep going higher, and eventually they'll fall off. And she's like, it's so weird. That was the thing that snapped me out of that moment. And I was just having another moment about how to respond to him, and you out of the blue messaged me about eagles. She's like, clearly God is speaking through you. And so I sent this text conversation to my other friend. I was like, this is what guidance looks like, where you just opened it up. And she's like, oh my God, I was just I've been really affected lately about basically feeling unheard as a child. She's realizing her own childhood trauma and not really knowing what to do with it, and feeling like she isn't important. And this morning, a friend of hers just randomly sent her a text about how grateful she is in her life. And she's like, maybe I need to start acknowledging this more. And I just wanted to share that story because, like I said, I think a lot of people have these different expectations of what guidance should look like. And so they're not opening themselves up to the guidance that's already there. So I'm curious, in your experience, what has that guidance looked like for you? And how do you help people to open up to the guidance that may already be in their lives?
Well, two things come into my mind when you say that. First of all, I love those stories, and I think those are always great signposts that you are on the right track when you're going, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. And I feel like spirituality, you said to that person, I bet you have experienced it. And this is where we're just such Luddites, where we're just so primitive. We're so in love with our five senses. If you stick your finger in an electric socket when you're a little girl and you get a shock, you never wonder if that was your imagination. You know, you never have to stick your finger in another plug again. 100% that's a real thing. And because spirituality happens in this very non-tangible, it's not in our five senses, it's in our energetic senses. Then we doubt it. We're like, did I imagine that? Is that a coincidence? But there's way too much stuff that has happened to people. And so when you're trying to make those changes and you get, like, quote unquote, a little sign, follow it. That should be your fuel to keep going. I'm a pretty open book. I've been sober for 17 and a half years. And in that program, it's all about, finding a higher power. And I think, that's the last thing in the world I wanted. Well, of course, if you're spiritually bankrupt, you're not putting all your money on the spiritual chip. Um, but that's why I get very frustrated in that there's this desperate need to separate spirituality from science. And I think that is what it is 100%. It is science. And there's love in this science. There's passion in this science. It's an emotional science. If you shred a tree, they can actually do experiments around this. You can see the tree shuddering the next time that person comes near them. We can't see this stuff, but we're so limited. And what I always tell people is, it's sort of like you're the fish in a bowl, and that fish cannot possibly comprehend that we go to Petco and get Tetra Flakes. It just doesn't have the brain capacity to understand that. And so it's down there starving, like, I don't know if I believe in this manna from heaven. And it's like, you know what? Just eat the flakes, look at the castle, keep swimming, eat the flakes, look at the castle, and live a full life. I do believe that the entire universe is a living being, and all living beings are trying to grow in a healthy way. And the things that fester and that are bad, they die and they break off, right? Because that's nature. And so this universe wants us to be happy. It wants us to thrive. It does connect and provide little tiny, it's like a crack in the sidewalk that a plant grows through. Maybe you happen to land in an open field and you were free to bloom. But so often that slab of cement gets put across us. We've got to seek that crack, and nature provides that crack somewhere. And that, to me, is spirituality. It's following your own desire to grow and be happy and feel sunlight of the spirit or the moonlight, whatever it is, because it's there for you. And it is science. It is science. We are entitled to change our frequencies. Every plant, if you face a plant away from the sunlight, guess what it does? It grows toward the sunlight so that it gets more. And we're told, oh, don't grow toward the sunlight. We grow up in the dark. No, grow to the light, whatever your light is. And to me, that's spirituality. And that is science. And so if you had to put spirituality down to one word, I'd have to make it a slash. I think it's hope/faith. So it's hope that no matter what, you can be happy, and faith that you will, no matter what. And science is there to support you in doing that.
I love leaving listeners with one action item or thing to think about, because we covered a lot of bases, and I love to simplify it and just help them feel the effects of this conversation immediately. If you're going to give them one piece of growth work for this week, what would it be?
Tune into the different components of your life and start looking at the ones that grow you toward the light and the ones that cause you to wither, and start putting your energy into the light-filled ones and turn your back on the wither.
Well, thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you've brought to your book, to this conversation, to the world. For listeners that are interested in connecting with you, learning more about you, where's the best place for them to find you and your book?
I wish I had made this name simpler, but my facility is called The Missing Piece, PEACE, the Missing Piece Center for Anxiety. And you can find links to my book there as well. Unfortunately, right now, when you put The Missing Piece into Amazon, it always changes it to PIECE. So if you want to buy the book, put in Laura Rhodes-Levin, The Missing Piece. And if you want to go to my website, it's Missing Piece, PEACE, the number 4, so 4, the digit, anxiety.com. So that's Missing Piece 4, anxiety.com. And thank you so much for everything you do, for following your frequency, and to all the listeners who are working on their frequencies. We'll see you all up with the eagles.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/349. Your challenge for this week is to start tuning in to which areas of your life cause you to wither or cause you to grow toward the light. This is such a powerful practice. There's a concept that has really changed my life, and it's around the idea of time management versus energy management. When we're racing against the clock, we always feel like we're in a losing battle. And the more we focus on the concept of time, it seems like the more it contracts. We never have enough of it. When we start focusing on our energy instead, what really lights us up or what drains us, this is revolutionary because it actually changes our concept of time. Just like when you're in flow, it expands that amount of time. It's like you can tune in more deeply to your life. And we have so many distractions that we're causing it to speed by even faster. Like I said, this is a revolutionary exercise. If you want to work with somebody to dive really deep into this concept so that it changes your life, this is just one of the many areas of mastery that we approach in Soul Strength Activation. So I know you guys have heard me talk about it. We have another cohort coming up at the very end of June. So reach out to me if you want more information on that at Mind Love Melissa. We also have the Mind Love Retreat coming up. If you want more information about that, we're going to be really rewiring our life so that we're not swimming upstream and we learn to go with the flow and to find our unique place in the divine design of it all so that we feel like the universe is conspiring for our highest good. It's going to be so powerful and not to mention absolutely luxurious. I've been focusing all of my efforts to make sure that this is the best week of your entire life. So if you want to find out about either of those, hit me up on Instagram at mindlovemelissa. You can also find all of my sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.